watermelon later.
Good job.
So are you talking this schematic?
Yeah.
On the website?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it doesn't really tell where to place the
Fish?
Fish emulsion is what you're
Yes,
smelling.
fish, okay.
That's the main carrier that I use for the rest of the nutrients.
Okay. Do I need to know the pH before I start planting the water? Because you're saying that we have to put in a quart
because you aren't,
into each bag?
you aren't doing it.
You have a northwest orientation. You're going to put your slicing type cucumbers on the west side of the trellis and pickling type cucumbers on the east side of the trellis. And then those are going to be the final level of your stack. So they're going to go up and above everything else and to the south. You can ask questions as we go through these too.
I guess, kind of a follow-up to that question is, I get the north-south orientation, but the way the trellis is set up is in this V. And so the thinking was you plant them toward the center of the garden so that they meet the trellis right away, or do you put them on the sides of the garden?
The cucumbers would be in the center.
Okay.
Winter squash and melons you put on the ends and take them up over the top. You only need a couple of plants. As you can see, if you look at the pictures of the honeydews that are in on this one in the corner, number 1, this last season. So those you put on your outside, the big vining crops, big spreaders. Any other questions in regards to that? Should we start most plants in Jiffy 7s with similar seed starting things and transplanters? Should many seeds be directly planted into the garden? You want to use transplants on your primaries. You can on your secondaries too if you use plugs. As much as you can. Every time you use a transplant, you're gaining 4 to 6 weeks on that space. So the reason you use transplants commercially is for production, to increase production, because there's only 12 months in a year. So transplants are always a good idea. However, they don't need to be 6 and 8 weeks old like you would buy in a nursery. You're typically going to put them in at 3 to 5 weeks old, so you gain more time there. The sooner you can get them into the ground, the better. The quicker that they'll take off. They would, if you took a plug and planted it in the ground the same time that you started a 3-inch pot, the plug will catch up and surpass the 3-inch transplant.
When you say plugs, what do you mean?
Who's talking?
I
The
throw my voice on both.
a plug would be like a 5/8 by 5/8. You're generally not any bigger than 3/4 by 3/4. Very, very small root balls. Basically, get the seed started in a controlled environment to get it to second true leaves and then in the ground.
Okay, so you're not using the type of 57.
No, Jiffy 7, they don't have anything. I recommend on theirs to use the 36 millimeter. That's the smallest pellet they make, and it's 1 inch by 1 inch.
But these plugs are 75 inches.
Yes, you can get them also in half. They're very small.
Are you talking about tomatoes, peppers, and that type of thing for that small?
Tomato, peppers, any of the primaries, melons. You buy plug trays, and then you put the starting medium in the plug trays and settle it in.
That's a question. At the same time I put my tomato transplants in, I put some seeds of different varieties in. And now those are maybe this tall. Will they, I don't think they're going to make it through, but will they last through the winter?
Will they last through the winter?
Well, I mean, yeah, if they
Yeah, if
start
they're covered.
producing towards the winter.
If you can control the temperature there well. Unless they're determinate. They're gonna fruit basically all within a certain time frame, and then they're gonna be done for the most part. If they're indeterminate, they'll go as long as the growing tips allow. Determinate basically fruits all at the same time. And that would be more your bush varieties, although some of them are very hard. Like your cherry tomatoes and yellow pear. They don't get very, very big if they're determinate plants. Any other questions on that? How should we manage the changeover from spring to fall crops, since we may be starting some crops while others are still producing? You're rotating a cycle, so it's not, you have to get out of the monoculture way of thinking. And if you're cycling in, you're planting 25 to 30% of your garden every 2 weeks. Would be a perfect cycle. You could shorten that, lengthen it a little bit. So it's basically phasing in and phasing out of those different seasons. The winter secondaries you're planting all the time. The primaries you're coming in with your transplants to replace the others. And you can actually have them growing at the same time a few weeks into their drop in production, and then you take the other plant out. So you have room to start them and work with them both. And it's up to you on the production. I mean, a good indeterminate tomato can produce for 9 months, fairly even.
So you can actually have two primaries in the same bag at the same time. One is been there for quite a while, and another one will take over.
You just plant it beside it in the same primary plane. You aren't going to be able to do that for more than about 3 weeks. Then it's going to start affecting the younger plants. So you basically determine the production, which is pretty easy to tell on a home garden. When you're watching the flowering and the fruit set. Do we have to practice crop rotation? I thought I heard you mention one time that we didn't, but my wife says we do have to do it. To keep peace, you better do what you like.
Learn that.
It's a good practice, not necessary in the bucket system, but you can rotate and mix around. It's not going to hurt anything either way. Yeah, you'll be looking at previous, especially after you take them out, the previous records. Does growing vegetables too close together allow enough sun onto the plants? Pardon my sarcasm. I hope everybody takes it in the spirit of its meant. All I can say to that is it's worked for 40 years. We talked a little bit about, for those who are up here, what you have to be careful of on your primaries. If some of your primaries you're starting as seed, and your secondaries as seed also, and a primary is a 90 or 110 day crop, and the secondary is a 30 day, then one's going to surpass the other and shade it out. So you either have to open it up so it can get some sun, because the primaries require more sun than the secondaries. Or you put a transplant in instead of starting from seed. So so that you don't have that challenge. And you'll see that in the number 1 garden here. I wanted to get it all into production, and then we'll phase in the cycle, and you'll see that over the next couple of days. So there were seed transplants and everything in there. Some are crowded, and they're gonna get real leggy until they break open to the sun, and then the stem and everything will really beef up, and it'll go from there. The honeydews that you saw in the last one started the same way. They went about 14 inches to get out of the beans, and then when we cut them out, the stems were that big around. Two plants in one bag. Any questions regarding that?
Question regarding starting the seeds. Depending on the, do you have to have some type of a controlled environment? Like I saw something on the permaculture website where a guy had some fluorescent lights and some bricks in a seed starting tray, or this time of year can you just start them outside, or is it
You can start them inside, but what we've always done for years, the conventional thinking is to start them inside, put them under lights of some sort, and then harden them off once they reach 4, 6, 8 weeks. All that does is slow down the plant. If you go ahead and germinate the seed indoors where you have a constant temperature, and then in the morning you set it out 10 to 15 minutes in the direct sun, and then into indirect sun or shade, that's a better way. They're going to be more productive. But you want to use the UV rays of the sun to your advantage. It's sterile. So if you do that 10 to 15 minutes, you aren't going to harm the plant, but you're going to sterilize the root medium surface. You don't have dampening off and other types of bacterial problems with starts. They're going to be, because any type of stress strengthens the plant. It doesn't have to be a breeze or wind. Even the sun, the outside temperature fluctuation stresses the plant where it builds a stronger plant in the beginning. So you're better to start them in when it's controlled, so they have it controlled in the evening. And then once they get past the cod leaves, not quite the 2 weeks, but once they spread the cod leaves, then bring them out a little bit indirect, and then in the shade the rest of the day.
When you germinate it inside, you don't really need light, it's just a controlled constant temperature.
It depends on what you're germinating. If you're germinating lettuce, for example, it needs light to germinate. That's why you only plant it a quarter inch or less deep in the soil. It needs light to germinate. But the others, no, they don't need light to germinate. As soon as the cod leaves are up, that's starting the photosynthesis process. You need to have a little bit of direct sun and then
15 minutes direct, then indirect, and at that 3 or 4 weeks when you're ready to plant them, they don't need to plant at all.
Well, after a couple of weeks, you'll be able to leave them out in the direct sun all day. It's the temperature that you're watching for, especially if you're starting your peppers and tomatoes for early. If you don't have a covered place outside to put them in, you're going to have to put them indoors, every night, and then outside during the day.
And how frequently should you water them? Since they're outside, so they're not on an automatic sprinkler.
Well, you want to keep them moist just by observation, depending on the medium that they're planted in. You definitely don't need any water stress. That'll slow them down quicker than anything.
So do you always have to germinate that way, or this time of year can't you buckets?
You can, but then you run the challenge that we discussed earlier. Seed versus transplant, primary seeds versus secondary seeds. So in the bucket system, you're going to trim about 15 days off of the normal plant to harvest time. Radishes that say on the package are 30 days or 35 days. you'll be harvesting in 20 days or less at the right size. Same with beets, carrots, and then same with the primaries too. So they're growing fast. In the yard, and you're making that space available that isn't needed. They're going to start dropping lower leaves anyway, so you're taking them off. On the secondary, if the lower leaves don't have direct sun for 4 to 6 hours, you're gonna see them start dying back, turning yellow and dropping. So you take them off. Let the top of the plant do the work and open that space for the secondary. When your fruit is size, so on a tomato, not when they first have started to grow, but when they've sized for that particular breed, then you prune everything up to that cluster.
Even if there's still got fruit, but
Well, there shouldn't be any blooms below a cluster,
right.
so you're trimming up to that cluster. Bloom should be up above that. If there's some below, then
Is that on the
Then
pictures too?
it's all the hedges on.
no. As soon as your first cluster sizes, then you prune it and move it out of the way. You can do a little bit on your determinate before that, because they're bushing naturally. But on your indeterminate, you're going to do some top pruning also. Now the next month, these will be on the strings. Tried to have them for today, but all the tomatoes and peppers will be stringing and taking vertically. And then as they reach the frame, we're going to let them down. Keep pruning up, let them grow up, let them down. So we can actually coil that pepper stalk. And then as it matures and starts to bark over, then it's just like a snake coil. So you just keep taking it straight up. You can do that for years on pepper. Any other questions in regards to that?
I'm just very confused. I'm really new to gardening. I feel like I walked into an advanced class and you're also speaking a language that I don't understand. My understanding was that you were going to kind of explain about the system and like the whole theory and how it goes. And it sounds like you're asking, people are asking questions about things and you're saying it doesn't go inside the system, but I kind of don't know what the system is.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that. Absorb what you're hearing here, and then when we go up and explain the system, it'll make sense.
Okay.
Okay? These are questions that are emailed to me with RSVP. So we go through those first, and then we'll go to the system. Okay?
I had a question, Ted.
Yes.
For the determinate tomatoes, you know how they'll start to bush out? They'll send out the shoots between the stalk and the leaves, kind of at a diagonal. Do you prune those until they get to a certain height and then let it bush, or?
On the lower ones on the determinate, you can. Generally, they aren't going to flower anyway. They're just sucking energy.
Right.
That's what we call them, sucking. And especially on your indeterminate, you definitely want to take them out, because they just sap energy. The plant will do much better with them out.
Okay.
You're talking about on it's a sucker that comes out of the crotch of the main leader of the plant and a branch, and the third one comes out of that crotch. You take those out. They do not benefit the plant. They actually use energy.
How many liters do you normally allow?
How many what?
Liters?
One.
Just one?
If it's an indeterminate.
Okay.
The determinate is bushing, so there's going to be several. I have 3 summer squash, each about 4 feet in diameter. That's the plant I'm talking about. And 3 feet tall. Is it possible to grow them with the bucket system? 3 feet in diameter tells me that it's been fed a lot of nitrogen. What we're used to in conventional gardening in the mono system is everything that you buy to put on it is weighted to nitrogen, because that's what people want. They want that flush beauty, but it's doing nothing for you on production. So you're not going to grow it that big foliage-wise in the bucket system. Also remember that unless it's a specific, I'm assuming that it's a summer squash, so there would be like a crookneck or a zucchini or patty pan, something of that nature. Unless it's specifically a hybrid bush variety, it's going to grow like a vine. So anything that's your typical summer squash, we're actually growing those up a string, and we're taking off lower leaves as it goes. If you think back and look at what they look like in the garden, usually you're leaving all the leaves on, but they're laying down and they're growing out. They grow vertical for a while, and then they lay down, and then they start going wherever you let them go. So we're going to take them vertical instead of letting them spread out on the ground. If it's a bush variety, it's not going very tall anyway. They're somewhat determinate anyway. But you don't need the heavy nitrogen feeding. There's a few vegetables that need nitrogen. Definitely not in the amounts that comes in your balanced fertilizers that you see used, like 20-20-20 and so on and so forth. Any questions in regards to the summer squash and how that works?
So the long vine is a good feed.
Yes.
Feeding it correctly.
And we're putting it where we want it. You're typically not using anything vertical. So that's the space we're going to use. And we also drop those down and furl those around the perimeter of the bag. You know, there's a point where, especially on a summer squash, they don't have a real longevity because of the temperatures. But you can get 6-8 feet out of it with pretty good production, and then take them out.
When do you typically take the summer squash out then? How long do the summer squash grow before you take them out then? Or just it depend on the plant when they're...
Yeah, it depends on the plant and the individual. If you want to keep letting it down and it's still blooming and producing, I'd keep taking the production.
Typically, how long do you see your summer squash lasting?
3 months.
3 months?
We have a breakdown of how much nutrients for the 36 bag bucket garden costs per month. $2.71. Any other questions on that?
On the nutrients, if you prepare some and you don't use it when you trade, can that be, what's left, can that be saved for 3 or 4 weeks for the next time you need it?
If you refrigerated it, it's still going to lose some of its vigor.
Okay.
But if you refrigerate it, you could. The 5A and B has, when that's mixed together, has about a 3-day shelf life. You want to start out mixing a pint. That you should be able to cover your garden with a pint on a 36 bag.
You would like to tell us what the ratios are? Well, it's a tablespoon. It's 2 tablespoons per gallon.
1 tablespoon for a half a gallon. That'd be 2 quarts, right?
But that's about as far as I can.
And how many teaspoons in a tablespoon? 3? You get it close.
And you said that it doesn't hurt to feed the 5A and B every 2 weeks if you wanted to not have to juggle the schedule.
3 weeks is fine, but there's been folks, I don't know for what reason, I haven't asked. I don't want to know. We're feeding 5A and B and the seasonal every week. Now, if you overfeed during one feeding, you're not hurting anything. It's just running off and you're wasting. Even what goes into the bag, the root system's only going to use 15% of that max, regardless of what nutrients you're using. So you get your best bang for the buck when you foliar feed. But if you feed multiple times, it'd be the same as if you were taking a, use a good example.
Fire hose?
It'd be like you taking your daily vitamin every couple hours. It's going to make you sick after a while. And you're going to see a little bit of leaf burn because of the acid. You're breaking down the leaf surface in order to get that penetration. So you're going to do damage if you keep doing it repeatedly because we have acid in it with the apple cider.
I think you said before, once you put pellets in and transplants, then you wait up to 2 weeks before you anything.
Once they have their true leaves. If all the transplants have the true leaves, the secondaries, if they get hit with a little bit, it isn't going to hurt them. If you think you made a mistake with vinegar, as far as the pH, just wash it off quickly. What we need is the solution to stay in solution for at least 15 minutes to get our maximum absorption of the nutrients. So that's the key. So if it's on and it's evaporated in 5 minutes, you're feeding them the wrong time of the day.
If you have to add hydrogen peroxide, do you add it to the flush or to the foliar feeding?
There won't even be any benefit to the flush. It would always be the foliar feeding. You want to, if you have real, if your water has high sodium in it or high particulates, it reduces its ability to hold oxygen. So in order to supercharge that, if it's dropping below 150 on the ORP meter, then we add the hydroperoxide. The only thing that you're going to be able to buy is 3%. What we use commercially is 35%. So which will actually burn you. But the 3%, if you use the amount that I gave on your analysis, then you'll be fine. So some of that comes flavored. You always want just plain, generic, nothing added.
Once you have your water analyzed, is it pretty much the same all the time? Or?
Generally, there's 2 times a year it can change, the fall and then the spring. The fall, with all the pumping on the aquifer, draws down the aquifer level, and the salts are higher, more dense in the water. So it's good to test in the fall so you know what that end of the range is. And then the spring is when the aquifers recover from the heavy pumping of the summer. And that's another time that you want to test because the salts will be diluted. Your nutrients are salts. The salt that hampers us in growing is the sodium, not necessarily the calcium. It's a good thing, provided it's available to the plant. Sodium locks up calcium because it's a stronger negative ion. So basically wraps it up and says you don't get it. So we break that free with the vinegar by reducing the pH. So twice a year.
So if we had it tested now, this would be like the spring thing?
Mm-hmm. Now's a good time.
So how do you get that tested?
You can do it yourself, or you can send it to my lab and we'll do it. We send back an analysis, easy to read analysis with the recommendations of how much vinegar you should be mixing, if you need any peroxide, what the levels are. It's a full range analysis, so you have everything that you need, including the pH.
So that should be included with every foliar feeding.
Yes, you always adjust the pH on your.
Okay, and then how often should the bag flushes be done?
Pardon me?
How often should the bag flushes be done?
You should only have to do that twice in the first 6 months. It's called a bag flush. You put in the quart in each of the bags. Twice in the first 6 months. After that, you should have enough plant material in the root system to buffer it.
So if,
Yeah, that's one cycle. Once a week for 4 weeks. That's one time.
Well, that's one cycle.
Yeah. So you do that twice in the first 6 months.
and is that any bag or only that's
You want to do it on all the bags.
So if I've never done it, that could be the reason why. And I'm assuming that there's a little thing to do there somewhere.
Yep.
It's under the Garden Master's nutrient applications.
Very end.
It's letter. It's in the, we have
I've read
technical
that, but
stuff,
I don't
A
remember that.
through, I forget how many, and then the installation and care is 1 through however many is it.
And do we mail our water to you, or we bring it to you, or what?
You can mail it, bring it to the clinic, give it to me at one of the projects, put it in that bucket out there at the corner of my gate. It has a lid on it. Put it in there and send me an email so I know it's in there. Otherwise it could be there a while.
And what, like a quart jar?
Pint is plenty. Pardon me? You can. If you have the little mechanical gauges that you get at Home Depot, you need to have those calibrated. Sometimes they're off quite a ways. And if you're talking about the strip?
Yeah. That's what I do.
Yeah, you can poor boy it. That's not very accurate, but it's better than nothing. Or you can use the pool test. The challenge with that is if you have high particulates in your water, it throws that off. Because any organic matter in the water absorbs pH adjustment. Or you can go to ISA or U of A. I don't know if they're still doing it. I think they charge $35. U of A used to in ASU extension office. Or you can do it online, and I send you a bottle and the labels, and you fill it up and send it back. And I don't remember what I paid. Anybody remember? 18? And I do them in groups, so we don't have one come in and I fire up the lab and do one. We'll do several of them generally once a month.
Several water tests.
Yeah, from several people.
So if I left that there, it wouldn't matter if you didn't test it for 3 weeks or so?
I wouldn't leave it out there. If I know it's out there, I'm going to bring it in.
Oh, I mean, but it doesn't change.
Not when it's sealed. You're going to keep the oxygen in there for the most part, and then we agitate it, open it, close it, and agitate it to see if it'll absorb any more.
So, but a pint,
That's more than enough.
mason jar. Okay.
Make sure it's cleaned out real well with the water you're using. No soap or anything else that can really
Right out of the dishwasher.
still rinse it out. Make sure there's nothing in. Rinse it out with the water you're going to put in, and then seal it up.
Oh,
And if it's a mason jar, don't mail it.
and you can flush the bag out even once the garden grows.
Yes.
So everybody does bag flush regardless of their water test?
Not necessarily. It depends on the garden itself, how it's doing. There's some pH, especially up in Cave Creek area, that's 8.5, almost 9. So we deal with that a little bit different, depending on the pH. pH will tell me a lot. That test that I give you tells me a lot of what you're going to have to deal with.
Okay, so then you let us know when you do the bag flush and that.
Yes, it's right on there. I put it on there with the instructions.
Okay, so I'm going to wait until my water's flushed.
You're gonna wait till your water's tested?
before I do the bag flush.
I can tell you yours is about 7.8.
No, but
You've already tested off those wells. So you could do the bag flush based on that, and then we'll zero it in
okay.
with your test. So you don't wait. The sooner the better.
Are you doing the anthem?
An anthem, I don't think so. But that's the
And my garden's growing.
probably not a problem.
Yeah, I've got enough produce for eating.
Pardon me?
I have enough produce for eating.
Good. Keep the neighbors out.
I just wanted to ask you, when we order the nutrients, we have them delivered to our home, or do we do like when we order the garden, we have it delivered to you, and then we come here and pick it up?
The nutrients?
Yeah.
Oh, we ship it.
Okay, so
I also-
have it shipped UPS
We can. You know, I allow orders to be picked up like on the clinic after the clinic's over, or on a project that's becoming kind of a headache for me. So I don't know if I'm going to continue with it, but generally I take it so you don't have to pay the shipping. So number 2 right now. End of June, then we go to 3. If you can, that's great. Oh, definitely. The seasonal will last you the 4.5 years it'll take you to use it. Especially if you have it in the should never be out in the garage or outside. The heat breaks down everything. And definitely not in the sun, because this doesn't even work. Any other questions? Keep moving here.
I had a question about the, you said a brown apple cider vinegar.
But there's some folks wanted to try it, so I put it in there, basically saying if I were to put one in the bucket garden, that's where I'd put it. It's going to lay over and grow outside, but it's going to be a real nuisance, especially if you have limited space. So I would put it, you can put it close to the bucket garden and use the same irrigation system, but I wouldn't put it in the bucket garden. The only thing you're going to be able to grow with it is bunch onions, and not for very long. It would be the size of your bucket garden, but 40 degrees,
About 40.
40 degrees minimum, won't separate it. 75 degrees at the most.
At the most.
75 degrees at the top.
Okay.
Well, wouldn't you just shake them anyway every time before you use them?
You should be shaking them real well, because they're, especially the 5A, because one of the ingredients in there is molasses, and you'll see it separate to the top. Part of what you see separate to the top is the molasses.
We've already harvested it.
Anemic plants, is this a lack of fertilizer number 6?
Even if it's green, I harvest them.
Use it more than likely if you'd be, but the thing about analysis we talk about when we talk about website advice is symptoms can mean a lot of different things. So one of my pet peeves as far as irritation is when somebody sends me an email and says, my leaves are yellow, what's wrong? Call a doctor and tell him you don't feel well and ask him what's wrong. You don't know. You need pictures, we need to see what it is, and we need some questions asked, which is on a form that's on the website for diagnosis problems. So print that form out, use that form, and then we can help with whatever challenge there may be.
What is your website?
Pardon me?
Your website again?
thegardenmaster.com. I can give you a card also if you like. Now this is Steve.
Yeah.
There you are. Looking right at you. These guys that go outside of the rules, I don't know.
Lots of times.
We wouldn't have the bucket garden if someone else didn't go outside the rules. Okay, you would, one of the bags of sand you mix with cow manure.
Charcoal too.
Pardon me?
I love this system because I can try various things, different bags, not pollute everything else.
Pollute was a good term. The yellowing, the reason I formulated the number 6 is for that learning curve in that first couple of months. There's one of the things that we've been focusing on is follow the rules to the letter and you won't have challenges. Another thing that dawned on me that we probably have to spend a little time on when I was flying back and forth to North Carolina a couple of weeks ago is patience. What I've discovered is